Guys, welcome to this week's episode where we're going to dive deep into processing emotions using breathwork. So first off, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey, just so you understand my own experience and how I've been able to release and process stored and stuff emotions that are stuck in all of our bodies, but we're stuck in mine. And so the first part of my journey really was about meditation, the mystical, being able to go out of my body and experience amazing things out of my body. That was what I consider phase one of my journey. And phase two was really coming back into my body. And so what had happened was that I was having all these amazing experiences in the spiritual realm, but I was having a hard time actually integrating that into my body. And the first sign for me was that I had completely lost my sex drive. And the crazy thing about that was I had met my now partner through the work, the spiritual work that I was doing. I met him through that community, and he was everything. He is everything that I had ever wanted in a partner. And it wasn't that I was dependent on him or he was dependent on me, but we'd actually both come to a place in our lives where we had really fallen in love with ourselves. Our hearts had opened to ourselves. And so we both say we manifested each other. We created each other based on that, our hearts being open. And so the hard part was that I loved this person with every ounce of my being. It was like as if our souls recognized each other the first time we saw each other, and we knew. And so for me, completely shutting off my sex drive, which was amazing at first. We had spiritual sex at first. But then we went through this period where it was, I had no desire. It wasn't that it was him. It's just, I felt like I am having all this amazing things happen from my heart up. I don't want to go down into my body. I don't want to descend down into my body. I don't want to go in those lower energy centers, those lower chakras, because I'm too busy up here. And that was a product of spiritual bypassing. That was a product of not fully integrating into my body, not applying all of those amazing things that I'd been experiencing, but actually just avoiding my body. And this was a journey that we went down for years, and a process that I really had to dig deep on. But it wasn't until my friend introduced me to breathwork that I understood why. And so we were at a retreat, a spiritual retreat. A friend of mine had just got back from a Wim Hof retreat, and he was telling me how amazing this thing called breathwork was, which I didn't know. There was some specific breathwork that I had been doing with this meditation teacher I was following, but it didn't encompass breathwork as a whole. It was just like a technique that we used that went with the meditations. And so when my friend, I saw it on his face, obviously he went from that Wim Hof retreat to this retreat we were at, and he just could not stop talking about how amazing this thing called breathwork was, and how much easier you can access the quantum field or the blackness or peace when you meditate, how much quicker you can get there actually by using your breath. And I'm like, you gotta tell me more, Tony. Tell me more about this breath work. And so all he did was lay me down and show me how to belly breathe. In fact, he looked at me and he said, take a breath. And so I breathed in, and when I inhaled, of course, my shoulders rose like that. And he said, stop. You are not breathing correctly. And I said, what do you mean I'm not breathing correctly? I breathe all the time. How could I not be breathing correctly? He said, when you take an inhale, I want you to inhale from your diaphragm, from your belly. Well, that was like foreign language to me. I had breathed a certain way that I didn't even have to think about my whole life. And now he was asking me to do something totally different. And so what he did was he put his hand on my diaphragm, laid me flat on the ground, and told me when I inhale that my belly, my diaphragm should rise. Not my shoulders, my belly. My shoulders would rise after it started from my belly. So instead of the shoulders being the first thing to rise, my belly would actually be the first thing to rise. And then when I exhaled, my belly would actually sink in. It would fall down. So side note here, if you Google search what it looks like when babies breathe, you'll actually see the proper way to breathe, the way that our bodies actually should naturally be breathing. But what happens is we start to accumulate stress throughout our lives, and it starts early on in childhood. And because we have no education around how to properly breathe, as they did in the Eastern way for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, breath was a part of their practice. We weren't ever taught that. And so what happens is as we accumulate stress, we move into a sympathetic nervous response. We move into fight or flight or a stress response. And when we move into that response, we shallow breathe, we erratic breathe, we unconscious breathe, which means we're breathing through our chest, through our shoulders, through our mouth, which actually is causing even more of a fight or flight response. So when you breathe erratic, when you breathe shallow, it actually perpetuates the fight or flight response. It perpetuates the sympathetic nervous system. So then you're stuck in this vicious cycle of your breath working against you. You're not even properly breathing. So all he did was actually just show me how I should be breathing properly to calm that stress response down in my body, to relax my body enough so that I could go right easily into the meditation instead of trying to fight my mind. My body could actually do the work for me. So he laid me down, put his hand on my belly, told me how to inhale and my belly should rise, and exhale and my belly should fall. He said, just start there. Just start with that. And when we go in for the next session and we go in to do a meditation in the next session, just practice that. Do like 5 breaths before we go into the meditation. And so I'm a really good student, and I sat there and I practiced from that moment after he left until the next session. I just practiced breathing with my belly, taking slow breaths. And when we went into the session, and I did this right before going into the meditation, as the lights were going down and everything was relaxing, all I did was take 5 slow belly breaths, deep, slow breaths. And then we went into the specific kind of breath techniques that I was learning with my teacher and meditation. But what happened next was something that had never happened in all the crazy experiences I had had so far. What happened was my body had a trauma release. A trauma release just means it allowed all these unprocessed emotions that had been stored and stuck in my body, that I had held down in that sympathetic response, in that contraction, because my body didn't know any different. What I'd done is allowed my body to relax enough so that these emotions, unprocessed emotions, some call it trauma, but you don't have to know what it is. You don't have to know what you're processing. This is the most amazing thing about breath work, as opposed to talk therapy or even certain meditation practices or even self-help practices where you're digging. This is what they do in talk therapy. They just talk, and dig. This is your body. This is working with your body and allowing it to feel safe enough and feel calm enough, because you have never allowed your body to do so. We're so detached from our bodies, which is why spiritual bypassing could be a problem, because you're not integrating into our bodies. We're already cut off enough from our bodies, and then we find these spiritual practices that even perpetuate this even more to move out of your body, instead of a practice of fully integrating, which is what we do with breath work. And what happened was my body shook uncontrollably for about 5 minutes. I could not have stopped it if I wanted it to. My body completely took over, and it shook pretty violently for about 5 minutes. But because I had enough experiences up to that point, I knew that I just had to surrender and allow the process to happen. And after about 5 minutes, I laid there for the entirety of the meditation, which was about an hour, and I did not move a muscle. And when the meditation was over and I got up, I literally felt like I had lost 20 pounds of physical weight off of my body. It felt like I could breathe. It felt like this heaviness that was on me was actually out of me now. And like I said, the beauty, the most amazing part is that I didn't have to know what it was. I knew going into it, there was some things that I had been kind of working on and some emotions that felt like they were at the surface. But I didn't have to go digging. I didn't have to go look for what it was. All I had to do was use my breath in a certain way so that my body could relax, and then my body could actually process these emotions, meaning just bring them up and shake them out. I show a video in my Breathwork 101 mini-series. That's a self-paced online learning course where you learn all about breathwork and all the different techniques. I show a video of a polar bear in nature. And this is done through somatic experiencing. You can look up somatic experiencing on YouTube and you can find this video of this polar bear and what happens to the polar bear when they go into a fight, flight, or freeze response, and then what happens when they come out of it. And it shows this polar bear essentially finishing the fight or flight response. So you see his legs tremble, his jaw trembles, his body shakes. And when I saw that video, I went, oh my gosh, that is exactly what happened to me. And animals in nature, after they go into that fight or flight response, that stress response, their bodies can shake it out. You see this happen with people who have a traumatic event happen. Many people will tell you, even paramedics will tell you, your body will shake and release that pent-up stress from it. It needs to release that stress, that anxiety. It needs to release it from literally the cells of your body. But because we don't know how to do this and we don't allow our bodies to relax enough to release it, it gets stuffed and stored down like a pipe, and you're just shoving and shoving and shoving on top and shoving on top and shoving on top. We're taught at a young age not to cry. We're taught at a young age not to do really weird things, not to throw fits. And so everybody's afraid to actually stop and just allow their body to process these emotions. We're all terrified of our emotions, so we stuff them down, never to be seen again. And what happens is all this accumulated stress ends up turning into dis-ease in the body because of this fight or flight response, because of the stress response, and because of all of these unprocessed emotions that get stored and stuffed down in your first 3 energy centers, your first 3 chakras. So how do we do this? How can I use Breathwork M to actually have this in my own life so that I can allow my body to process these unprocessed emotions? So there are 2 techniques that I teach within my programs. They are Soma Breathwork techniques. I am a certified Soma Breathwork facilitator, and we focus on 2 techniques to really help with these unprocessed emotions and help to bring these things to the surface. A really common theme in the breathwork ceremonies that I hold, or the people that do my breathwork on a regular basis, is they will tell you, especially the first time they try breathwork with me, they will cry. They don't even know why they're crying. They'll just start crying. Their bodies will just start crying and they have no idea why. And this is because your breath is getting you into a state where it's allowing your body to bring these emotions to the surface. You don't have to go digging with them, not when you're practicing breath work on a daily basis, because this isn't just one shot and you're done. The stress, the accumulated stress, on top of all of those first 7 to 10 years that get piled upon, then on top of that, you're creating more stress response and more stress, and it just stacks. And so you have to clean it out, but then you have to maintain it. And so that's why the women in my course have a daily breathwork practice, so that they're constantly keeping that channel open and allowing these emotions to be processed as they're coming up, instead of shoving them down, instead of stacking them up. So there's 2 techniques that we use. The first one is called the Mula Bandha, or the root lock, or the pelvic floor lock. You can hear this called many different things. The name of it doesn't really matter, but what you're doing is what actually matters. So in the root lock, or the Mula Bandha, this is an old pranayama technique. There's 3 major locks in working with pranayama techniques, but this root lock is basically when you are taking your pelvic floor and you're squeezing it up and in. So you're actually engaging your root, which is where you hold a lot of these unprocessed emotions. You're activating that root by engaging your pelvic floor and using your inhale. So there are 3 different aspects that I teach within my program that makes what I do a little bit different than anything you may find out there, because there's 3 aspects to this. There's number 1, the squeezing and engaging of the pelvic floor. Number 2, you're utilizing your inhale along with squeezing. And number 3, you're visualizing at the same time. So you're using visualization, you're using your inhale, and you're using your pelvic floor, all 3 at the same time, so that you can allow your body to pull up this really dense, stored, stuck emotions, stuck trauma, stuck energy, whatever you want to call it. You're allowing yourself to pull that up from the root and bring it all the way up to the surface. You don't have to go looking for it. It will come up. I promise you, this is how powerful your breath is. So when we're doing this Mula Bandha, you're squeezing your pelvic floor, you're squeezing all those muscles. Your pelvic floor is made up of your sphincter, your perineum, and your genitals. All 3 of those muscles make up your pelvic floor. So you're engaging all 3 of them, and I always tell people to visualize like you're pulling them up and inside your body. But at the same time, you're also pretending that your inhale starts at your pelvic floor. So as soon as the moment that you engage that pelvic floor, you're actually engaging your inhale. So it's like your inhale and your pelvic floor are working together in sync as one. So your pelvic floor and your inhale are working at the same time as you're squeezing those muscles, you're inhaling. Then this is where the third aspect comes in, which is visualization. So I always tell someone, pick a visualization, whether it be a red circle, that's what I use, or a flower, or a snake, or fire, or a butterfly. I've had women use all sorts of different visualizations. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it resonates with you. And that's where the visualization comes in. So you start at your pelvic floor, your inhale starts there, your visualization in your mind's eye, because your eyes are closed, starts right there as well. And you use all three. And when you inhale, you act as if that inhale is pulling that root energy up, and you continue to inhale very slowly, and then you put your breath back. And then when you can visualize the red ball, let's use that for an example because that's what I use. When you visualize your inhale that's moving that red ball, your inhale and the visualization are working together, and that inhale is pulling the visualization of the red ball all the way up, your head goes back, and when that red ball is at your crown chakra with your head back so that you have an open channel for this energy, for this emotion to move through, you hold your inhale at your crown with your head back. And as you hold your inhale, you continuously squeeze that pelvic floor so that you're engaging that root energy, so that you're opening the channel so that those emotions are allowed to come up and come through you, and you're squeezing that. That is the first technique that we use to allow our bodies to process these unprocessed emotions. You can call it trauma. I don't like to always use the word trauma because people think trauma is like a really big, huge thing that happened in their childhood, and trauma doesn't have to be that. Trauma can happen in a moment when someone at school says you're ugly or they don't like you. That causes an emotional disturbance in your body. That causes trauma in your body. That causes unprocessed emotions in your body. So when I say trauma, it doesn't have to mean anything big. It can mean something very simple. So that is the first technique that we use, using our breath, using our pelvic floor to allow these unprocessed emotions to come up. The second technique that we use is rhythmical belly breathing. So a lot of my breathwork ceremonies, a lot of my breathwork activations involve both of these things. They involve rhythmic belly breathing, and they involve the pelvic floor or the root lock or the mula bandha. So when we do rhythmical belly breathing, all this means is that we are breathing to a rhythm. So we're breathing in for 4 seconds and out for 4 seconds, or in for 2 seconds and out for 4 seconds, or in for 4 seconds and out for 8, or in for 2 and out for 2. But the important thing is that you're breathing to a rhythm. Everything in nature, including our bodies, is done to a rhythm. And so we're just tapping into this natural rhythm that's already in nature. The other thing that this does is it makes your breath like a circle so that you're not having any pauses in between your inhales and exhales. So it's like a continuous circle when you breathe in a rhythm, so that when you're breathing in for 4 and then you're breathing out for 4, there is no pause on the inhale and no pause on the exhale. The other aspect is that you're breathing with your belly. As my friend showed me that moment in Mexico that completely changed the trajectory of my life and started the second phase of my journey, which was embodiment. Embodiment meant that I had to be in my body to do the work and to allow these unprocessed emotions to move through me, because they weren't going to move through me if I was stuck up in my crown. I had to go back down, descend into the body, into my root, into my sacral, into where that energy and that emotion was stored, so that it could be released, so that I could have full integration and full application and actually enjoy sex with my partner instead of trying to avoid it, to actually become my full spiritual self and my full human self, integrated and in alignment and balance as one. And so in this rhythmic belly breathing, we are breathing with our belly, which I just explained in the beginning. Your belly is rising as you inhale, your belly is falling as you exhale, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth always. In fact, that's how you should be breathing all of the time throughout the day. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And you're breathing to a count, you're breathing to a rhythm, you're engaging that diaphragm, and you're doing this for an extended period of time, from anywhere to 4 to 5 minutes, all the way up to 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the outcome, depending what I'm facilitating, and depending on what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. As you're doing this rhythmical breathing, your body is getting relaxed enough, and the breath work is actually triggering the limbic system in your brain. The limbic system in your brain is where all of your subconscious programming exists. It's where you became your identity in those first 7 years, and it's how you actually can reprogram this subconscious mind after you have allowed this release of all this pent-up energy that stands in the way of being able to do that. So when we do the rhythmical breathing portion, this is changing the pH level of our blood. It's actually growing the electromagnetic field around our body, and it's triggering the limbic system in our brain. So it's allowing these deeply unprocessed emotions to rise to the surface. Then when you combine the rhythmical breathing with the pelvic floor, you have a powerhouse, and it is all accomplished with your very own breath. It's not like therapy where you have to go to somebody to do something for you. It's not like other self-help or spiritual modalities where you're waiting for a healer to heal you. You are healing yourself. You are healing your emotions. You are healing your inner child. You are connecting with your spiritual self through your very own breath. And this is how I believe how we truly, truly come into our own power, not when we're dependent on others to do this for us, but we could do this on our own. And this is why I fell in love with breathwork. Needless to say, after that happened, and I had no idea what happened to me, I went home, I researched breathwork like a mad woman, because that's what I do, and I stumbled upon Soma breathwork, which completely changed my life. I signed up for the instructor training right away and have been teaching people this style of breathwork ever since then for the last 3 years. And not only have I been teaching other people, I've been applying it into my everyday life. And this, like I said, was really phase 2 for me, which was full integration into my body. And I couldn't believe how powerful my own breath was. And not only that, if I would have had known how to use my breath when I first started to meditate, oh my gosh, how much quicker that I could have actually experienced the benefits of meditation. If I had just learned to be able to relax my mind using my breath, I could have easily slipped into meditation, which took me a really long, frustrating time to get to. And so that's why I love breathwork. I would never say only do breathwork or only do meditation, because I practice both in my life. I think meditation is important for the mind, and breathwork really is for the body, so that you're integrating both of those things, so that you're not trying to escape your body, but you're actually fully enjoying being in your body. So those are the 2 techniques that I teach again in my Breathwork 101 mini-series that you can do online, self-paced. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. You can take as long as you want, or as short as you want, but you learn in there 5 actually major breathwork techniques that will cover every single aspect of your life, whether you want to go to sleep, whether you want to digest food better, whether you just want to have less stress and anxiety. If you want to check out my mini-series, you can click on the link in the description below. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully you got some value from that. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever tried breathwork? Have you tried meditation? What do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I love you guys. Mwah.